have set it to record, and as you asked the question, it made me look over and double check, and it is showing that it's recording. So it will be recorded, and we'll get it sent out so that you can listen at a later time. So, okay, great. Well, is everyone ready to get started? Give me a yes if you are. If not, that'll be interesting to see someone throw a no in there. But anyway, okay, well, Dr. Dan, I think everyone here knows you. If by some strange chance anyone doesn't, I'll go ahead and just say real quick, you are a PhD and your primary focus is anti-aging, and you have quite a wealth of knowledge in the area. And we'll let you and your knowledge speak for itself through the Q&A. And I think if there were anyone that didn't know you, they will definitely know who you are and exactly your expertise as this webinar goes on. So, all right, without any further ado, folks, let's get on with it. Okay, so I'll start, like I said, in the chat box. Go ahead and throw in your questions. Please, when you ask your question, give us your age and your gender. That will definitely help help the good doctor give a more specific answer to your question, because age and gender definitely are relevant to a lot of issues and a lot of circumstances. So also, if you have a question about medications, eliminating them, or I don't know, any question about medication really, please try to keep it. Dr. Dan is a doctor and a PhD, but he's not necessarily a medical doctor, so he can't speak specifically to medical advice. Dan, I'll let you throw in some more disclaimer on that, but try to keep those to high blood pressure medication, type 2 diabetes, or pain pills, or some cholesterol medications. And other than that, right there is the good doctor himself, Dr. Dan. Are you ready to take off and deliver some goods, answer some people's questions?
I am. This is going to be fun. I see we got quite a few questions coming in. So,
yes, we
so
do.
good.
All right, so let's get started here. Okay. All right, this one was a doozy. It came in right out of the gate. We already had some questions loaded up, but when we saw this one, we wanted to go ahead and throw it in there and just see what he's got for it. So
yeah, this is
Dan, go ahead.
This is definitely an upper level question here. I think this came in from Sherry. No, wait a minute.
This is Wendy.
Not Sherry.
Wendy.
This is from Wendy.
Right.
And I need to ask for Wendy to just post a little bit more information. I'm going to give a couple of basic tips, though adrenal function is definitely something you'd want to seek a specialist on to discuss this. But the one question I had specifically for Wendy to get a little more clarity on how I answer is, are you sleeping well at night? Are you waking up in the middle of the night, especially halfway in the middle between 1 and 3 a.m.? Are you waking up hungry? Are you having blood sugar issues during the night? I'll let you post that, but the reason I ask that is oftentimes waking between 1 and 3 a.m., assuming you're sleeping sort of a traditional kind of 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., sort of a typical 8-hour evening. Waking between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. may indicate low blood sugar, and this is a symptom and a sign of inadequate glycogen reserves in the liver, low adrenal function, and cortisol. Cortisol essentially helps us break down glucose so that when our glycogen gets low, our blood sugar gets low while we're sleeping, the cortisol helps us maintain normal blood glucose so that we don't get disrupted while we sleep.
Wow.
So
can I pause you? I don't want to throw you off at all. I know that when you get on a train of thought like that, I don't want to disrupt it. But you had a lot of big words in there, and I'm not, you throw in the glucose and the glycogen stores and things like that. Everyone, if you will, gosh, you understand what I'm getting at. I know that a lot of us understand what those are and what that means, but I don't know how many out there.
Sure, I'll try to simplify that, Brian. But I would like to hear from Wendy so I can answer her question the best if she is sleeping through the night or if she's waking up in the middle of the night, because it does kind of impact how I answer the question for her. So because if she is waking up during the night, then that symptom is probably related to a blood sugar issue that she's having during the night due to her low adrenal function and cortisol. And so,
okay. So I see here. She says she's sleeping well. She may wake up 1 to 2 days a week, but can go right back to sleep. Sometimes I do wake up hungry though. Try to stop eating by 8.
Okay. So, one of the things for adrenal function, especially for people that know they have low cortisol, of course, this is assuming she's been tested for it and she knows she has low adrenal function and low cortisol. Otherwise, I wouldn't recommend it. But you want to really be careful about eating and drinking sugary and refined foods. Those are going to tend to aggravate the problem. But and it sounds like she is waking up some, if you're waking up a couple of times a week, that can actually contribute to adrenal fatigue and can essentially make the problem worse. And so if she hasn't tried this, I would actually try having a healthy snack before bed to essentially help boost the cortisol levels. And when I say healthy snack, it needs to be something that's healthy. It doesn't have to be something that's large. The snack really should be like 1 or 2 bites of food that contain some protein and some high-quality fat. So we're not talking about a bowl of ice cream or a bedtime snack, that sort of thing. But it could be a little bit of peanut butter, a small slice of cheese, a high-quality nut. Something that's small, like I said, 1 to 2 bites, but just a small little before bed snack is going to actually help raise cortisol levels, which should help you sleep and should help your cortisol levels in the morning, because it's going to tend to make your cortisol levels rise in the evening. That's the simplest tip that I would give. The next thing that I would say to Wendy would be to look at an adrenal fatigue specialist. So a couple of ones that I would tend to recommend would be Dr. Alan Christensen, who's actually written a book on adrenal fatigue and some diet tips for that. And then also Dr. Kevin Dobrinsky has actually written a book on this as well. His wife suffered with this greatly, and he wasn't finding good solutions in the medical field, so he actually went and did some research himself to help solve the problem. And then the final thing I would say is make sure you're seeing a physician or a functional medicine specialist that is actually paying attention to this. Sometimes the people in the medical field don't pay close enough attention to adrenal function and especially adrenal fatigue, and they're not testing your cortisol levels, and they're not really listening to your symptoms. And so if you're having that case, I would absolutely seek out a medical professional that's going to test you for these things and help you improve it. So definitely a complex question to kick things off with, but hopefully some of those tips will help, and you can check out a couple of those resources I mentioned.
All right. Wow, that was a doozy. I was sitting here really trying to focus and follow along with you while reading some of these other questions. But Wendy, I really hope that helps you out. Moving on, next question. And guys, some of these, I was able to write some of these questions down, but as they're coming in, I know there's no way I'm going to be able to keep typing them up right here. So bear with us as I just read them out and try to follow along. Okay, so next question is 59-year-old female, works full-time, and her job requires full sitting. She wants you to advise her on some strategies to combat the sitting, since she's just heard that it is the new smoking.
Great question. That's from Sherry, I believe?
Yes, that was from Sherry.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sherry. I mean, sitting absolutely is being linked to more and more lifestyle diseases of the sedentary lifestyle. The one thing you do have to realize is that people that are highly active or are regular exercisers are not necessarily falling into those research studies. By and large, our populations are becoming more and more sedentary, and our jobs are becoming more and more sedentary. So not only do we sit all day for leisure, but we sit all day for work. And so we literally don't move. And the research is showing that the people that move the least are showing higher lifestyle diseases. And so the biggest key is just to make sure you're getting 30 to 60 minutes of physical activity a day. Now, I didn't say exercise. You don't have to necessarily exercise intensely every day. I recommend people exercise intensely 20 to 30 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. But every day you need to get your body moving. So if you can get up and take a 30-minute walk on your lunch break, that's huge. If you work in an office environment, ask for a stand-up desk or a desk that can be moved from a seated to a stand-up position. In fact, that's something I'm doing this year, as I find I am sitting more and more. I'm standing up right now, but a lot of times in my office I'm sitting for these interviews and different things, and so I'm going to get a stand-up desk so I spend more time standing. The rule on sitting for low back health is to make sure you stand 3 minutes out of every hour. So if you find yourself working away, make sure you get up for 3 minutes out of every hour. That really helps our low back, because our low back really doesn't like the sitting position. Our spinal column gets compressed, and so get up and move around. But just make sure you're not in the what I call the top 25% of sitters. You want to be in the top 50% of movers. So make sure every day you're spending 30 to 60 minutes moving, whether it's walking, cycling, running, exercising. I don't really care what the activity is. If you find yourself and you realize, I drive to work, I sit at work all day, I drive home, I sit at home, and you're not getting in some purposeful moving, you need to add some moving to your lifestyle. Otherwise, you'll fall into the category of people that are so sedentary, we're seeing similar disease rates as smokers. So that's a great question.
If I can throw just a little something in there, you mentioned the stand-up desk. I know it can be difficult sometimes to get your employer to fork over the money for a stand-up desk, but I have seen a lot of resources for some DIY stand-up desks. It's actually not a stand-up desk, but it would be some sort of contraption that maybe you would build yourself to sit on top of your desk that would help elevate your computer and things like that. So that could be a quick solution right there too, Sherry. All right. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Sherry, for asking. Next question. This is going to come from I think Anna from Salt Spring, British Columbia in Canada. And no snow in Canada? Wow. Okay. But I have it in South Carolina. Go figure. Okay. So Anna's question. She's 60 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And should someone with osteoporosis avoid plow-type movements, such as lying on your back, legs overhead, and other deep flexion movements?
Wow, that's a great question. The textbook answer to that is yes, they should avoid those. The experts, the doctors, the back specialists say extension, especially excessive excessive flexion movements are to be avoided with osteoporosis. So the plow type movement, lying on your back, throwing your legs up over your head, even standing and flexing down for some deep toe touches, excessive flexion movements of the spine are considered risky for people with osteoporosis. So that's the general rule. However, I always tell people no single person necessarily applies to the general rule. So my follow-up question to that would be your level of osteoporosis, and has it been diagnosed to be in your spine? Has it been diagnosed to be in your hips? There are some people that have been diagnosed with osteoporosis and it's in their hips, not in their spine. So then why do we restrict their flexion movements when their osteoporosis is in their hips? So the other kind of clarification on that is some people are diagnosed with osteopenia, which means they're actually borderline. They don't have osteoporosis, but their bones are thinning. And sometimes we slap them with all these restrictions. So if you have a full diagnosis of osteoporosis and it's in your spine, then deep flexion movements are to be avoided because they can aggravate your osteoporosis. However, if your osteoporosis is in your hips or your femurs, your pelvis, then these movements don't need to be avoided. So lying on back, throwing your legs over your head, the plow type movement, not sure if that's one that people necessarily need to be doing anyway. So it's not like it's a movement that you're going to lose a tremendous amount of functional ability by not being able to do it. But those are the general guidelines for people with osteoporosis.
Wow, fantastic. Now, Dan, would I be fair in throwing this in there? A lot of these questions, as easy as some of them might be to answer, there is also the extra added, I guess, warning in there that it's difficult to answer them completely because you really don't know the person's complete circumstances and how they move and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people, like for the osteoporosis, for example, there's a general rule and there's a general guideline that we use for people with osteoporosis. But no one is people with osteoporosis. They're an individual, and so their unique case may be completely different. And to give you an example, we come up with rules for people that sometimes I laugh at. We say, well, you've just had some sort of surgery, so you're not allowed to lift 10 pounds. And I always say to that, well, that's kind of a silly rule, right? Because how do you get yourself off the toilet? Because it takes a lot more than 10 pounds to get off the toilet,
Yeah.
So sometimes we come up with these general rules, and honestly, sometimes I wonder if the medical industry has even thought them through. It's sort of like some physician said, well, you shouldn't lift more than 10 pounds. And it's like, well, really? If your house is burning down, you're going to pick up your 50-pound kid and carry him out, So osteoporosis, for example, some people with spinal osteoporosis have absolutely no issue with flexion movements and extension movements. And then the next client comes in and they have significant pain, discomfort, and just general symptoms with, minor flexion movements. And so you do have to treat it on a client-by-client basis. But again, the general guidelines is to avoid deep flexion movements because that can exacerbate symptoms if you have osteoporosis of the spine, again, not of the hips and pelvis.
Okay, fantastic. All right, Anna, I hope that did it for you. So next question. Let's see what we have here. Looking real quick. All right, so I think this one's coming from Luann. It's a little bit of a long one here. Let's see. Can you read it there, Dan? Can you?
I can, yeah. The synchronized swimming question?
Yes.
Yeah, so Luann suffers from leg cramps while practicing after 30 minutes. Practice is 2 to 3 hours in duration. Many times I have to get out to run warm water on legs to break the cramp. Cramps are on front and back of shin and in toes. Tried changing diet and found no relationship to dairy, meats. Gluten-free and soy-free for 5 years. I've used calcium, minerals, drink water throughout practice, out of ideas. Boy, that's a challenging one. Sounds like you've you've pretty much tried everything. Interesting that you're suffering the leg cramps while practicing after 30 minutes. I'd be curious to ask Luann if you could just type in the chat box. You're suffering from the cramps awful early in the practice. Do you suffer from them again later in the practice at the 2-hour mark? Normally people tend to cramp up after about an hour and a half or 2 hours of activity. In fact, I mean, we've even seen LeBron James cramp up in basketball games, and major NFL players cramp up, but tends to be towards the end of competition, not in the first 30 minutes. So that's kind of interesting. So I'm curious if you're cramping up then all throughout. So, I mean,
Yeah, she says it starts at, can you hear me? She starts at 30 minutes and continues throughout the whole practice, I guess.
And it looks like you've tried a lot of different supplementation things. So calcium is typically not, I see that you say you've used calcium. Typically, cramping has a lot to do with hydration and potassium levels. It can also have a lot to do with sodium levels. So if there's not enough salt in your diet, your muscles are going to tend to cramp. And so for athletes that are having trouble with this, and I would consider you an athlete, if you're doing synchronized swimming for 2 to 3 hours, that's some significant work. That's a lot of athletic training there. So what I would recommend is you start trying to eat a banana every day you're practicing, for sure, if not every day. You may need a banana and a half. I would also consider looking at your salt intake. You may need more sodium in your diet. So it's not just hydration, but it's also making sure you have enough sodium. Our muscles use a lot of sodium when they're contracting, and synchronized swimming is a tremendous amount of muscle contraction. And so if you're low on sodium, your muscles are going to tend to start cramping because they're using a lot of sodium to contract. So a lot of times, if your diet's really, really clean, and it sounds like from what you're putting here, dairy, meats, gluten-free, soy-free, I'm guessing you're not eating a lot of canned goods, there might not be enough sodium in your diet. So I would look at a sodium supplement, eating more bananas, and it looks like you're already drinking enough fluids. But the other thing to consider would be to hydrate prior to practice. So before practice, drinking 24 ounces of water, so you're hydrated before practice, not just during practice, because it's actually the increase in fluid prior to practice. Once you begin to get dehydrated during practice, you can drink all you want during practice. You're never going to catch up. You're dehydrated, your muscles are going to cramp, and it really doesn't matter how much you drink during practice. So if you haven't been pre-hydrating, I would recommend 16 to 24 ounces prior to practice, having a banana for breakfast the day of practice, if not every day, and then look at a sodium supplement. Those would be my suggestions.
Wow, okay. So good, Luann. Hope that works for you, and congratulations on getting back into synchronized swimming. I have no idea how synchronized swimmers do the things that they do, but it has always been impressive to me. So kudos to you. All right, next question is, let's see, any advice regarding calcium oxalate kidney stones? No family history. This is coming from D. And D, I don't know, are you a male, female, your age? Dan, do you think those things are relevant, male, female, or age, regarding these calcium oxalate kidney stones? What do you think?
To my knowledge, they're not. I've actually I've suffered from one, and my wife has suffered from one. So in terms of male, female, we're dead equal in my household. Absolutely excruciating, and definitely something you want to avoid. The reality is, I'm looking at the question here, and you're doing all the right things. So, I mean, the first thing I would have said was dairy. In fact, cheese is one of the big considerations, and if you're saying you've already reduced the high oxalate foods and there's no dairy in your diet, then boy, I'm really not sure. I mean, the next thing would be to increase your water intake, but you're already drinking 2 liters of water a day. So you're really doing all the right things, honestly. Yeah, getting off the calcium citrate supplements should help, could help. But I mean, honestly, you're doing the right things. The first thing I would have said was to look at dairy intake, especially cheese. And then the second thing would be to be drinking more water. You could be drinking more than 2 liters of water a day. Absolutely could be. But I mean, that's a pretty good amount of water intake. So so honestly, I think those are really the right things. So there's not a whole lot of things I would really suggest. I mean, those are the main things: drinking more water. You don't mention here caffeine intake. I'm guessing based on the list of no dairy, gluten, soy, refined sugar, I'm guessing that you're not drinking diet sodas. But caffeine intake from diet sodas or even regular soda could certainly pose an issue. The phosphorus and the caffeine can sometimes mess up kidney function. But assuming that's not a factor, so that might be something to ask. Is there a lot of caffeine intake? Is there a lot of soda intake? Otherwise, you're doing the right things. Some people, and I actually have a client who struggles with these as well. He's in his mid-40s, and it's just something that, I don't know, their biology seems to struggle more with these than others, even though they're doing the right things. So it looks like you're already on the right track.
Okay, so yeah, I was muted. Sorry.
Looks like she posted a little follow-up there. No caffeine intake, no sodas. So, I mean, really doing the right things. 37-year-old female. I guess my other follow-up question to that would be any pregnancy-related. That these can often be triggered by pregnancy, coincide with pregnancy. Women sometimes struggle with them post-pregnancy, and then typically within a year to 2 the symptoms go away. So I'm curious if this has been a lifelong struggle or if it's been more related to recent pregnancies, because sometimes my wife, in fact, hers was pregnancy related. So sometimes that can be an issue, obviously more so for women. Men don't have that concern. Sometimes for women in their 30s, it's just an issue of they have these struggles post-pregnancy. But it looks like you're doing all the right things based on your diet and your water. So not a lot of other great recommendations.
Yeah, I think sometimes things like this, it all boils down to just an experiment of one. We are human, we are individuals, and no single one thing is going to work for everyone. And I think sometimes maybe it's just the simple pain of the fact that some people are more prone to get things like this, and you just have to tolerate them and try to manage them as best as you can. You think?
Some people, I've had a kidney stone, to my knowledge, only once.
Fortunately, I've never had them. So.
Yeah, my wife had one, and a lot of us have them and don't know we have them because they're so small. We pass them and we never. They're tiny and they move through our kidneys and we never notice them. But when we form a stone that gets just large enough that it gets stuck somewhere in our kidney, boy, it causes a lot of pain. And so some people just produce more of these than others. And diet is a big culprit, but it looks like you're doing all the dietary things right.
Okay, great. Well, let's keep this clock moving. let's see. Next, Dawn. Dawn is a trainer, so she's got this question here. She's training a client who's in his mid-30s and blind. What are some suggestions I can give him for doing appropriate or helpful exercises on his own? Other than seeing me, he sits mainly, and I don't know how else to help him stay active when I'm not there to watch him.
Okay, great question. I've trained a couple of blind clients over the years. One of the first things that I try to teach my training staff here is you have to start to think about putting yourself in the position of the client. And so this can be, you know, if they're 50 pounds overweight, they're 40 years deconditioned, whatever it is, right? So for a blind person, someone who's visually impaired, we need to think about, so what would be some simple exercises we could teach them to do at home? And so you have to almost sort of think, okay, so what are some exercises I could easily do at home safely? You know, go ahead and close your eyes and work through some of those things. And so what are some simple, safe exercises you can do at home where you really don't need a personal trainer? You don't need somebody watching you. You don't have to worry about equipment. So you can teach someone jumping jack movements, jump squat movements, squat movements, lunge movements. All of these things you can do in a very small space. You know, you need about 5 feet by 5 feet to do all those things. And you don't need vision to do those things. You can do jump squats with your eyes closed. You can do jumping jacks with your eyes closed. You can do squats with your eyes closed. You can do lunges with your eyes closed. Now let's get down on the floor. What can we do down on the floor? Well, we can do planks. We can do plank up-downs. So you're going from the plank position up to the push-up position. You can certainly do push-ups. You can do mountain climbers. Then we can put some of those things together, right? You can do a burpee with your eyes closed. Now, for those of us that are very sight-oriented, and we're used to having our eyes open, you go and try a burpee with your eyes closed, and you might make yourself throw up. But a blind person is not going to have that issue because they're not normally vision dependent, so they're used to movement without their sight. So those are just a simple example. So, you know, squat movements, jumping jack movements, push-up movements, plank up-downs, you know, so simple things you can do that don't take any equipment. And really, once you teach somebody how to do those movements well, for the most part, they don't need a lot of form correction. And it's something you can reinforce every time you see them. You know, you work on their squat form, work on their push-up form, take a look at how their plank form looks. You know, when they do jumping jacks and squat jumps, are they doing them well and, you know, having good form? So it doesn't have to be complex. I mean, it can simply be 5 to 6 exercises, you know, do 10 reps each and do 2 rounds, you know, so they're getting 10 to 15 minutes of intense activity. I mean, you do 10 squats, 10 squat jumps, 10 jumping jacks, 10 push-ups, 10 plank up-downs, and repeat it. That's a great full-body workout, you know, so it doesn't have to be complex. I would say keep it simple, no equipment, body weight, and those will be great. If your client's doing those consistently 2 and 3 times a week without you, you should see the results. You should see them coming in with a little bit better conditioning and doing those movements a little bit better. You'll notice, hey, they can do a lot more push-ups than they could 3 or 4 weeks ago. So you'll see the effect of that. Hope that helps.
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay. All right, so next question. We've got, let's see, did we answer this one okay? Okay, no, here we go. All right, so, oops, that's poor typing on my part. I'm just turned 47 and trying to get back into decent shape. What is my first step? All right, Doc, what have you got? 47. Oh, and he, a male to he, yes.
Okay. Well, there's a couple different approaches on the first step, but I would say the first step is to figure out a way that you can get consistent 3 times a week for 20 minutes. Now, for some people, that means carving out a half an hour or even an hour. But The mistake people make, I think, sometimes is they take too big of a time commitment. And so I say start with 3 times a week, 20 minutes. And if that turns into 30 minutes, fine. But your first step really should be to learn 8 to 10 sound functional movements for your entire body. Especially at the age of 47, you don't need to go do anything too intense and hurt yourself. So just start with some basic functional movements. So the ones I listed already, I think are a great place to start. Go ahead, Brian.
That's what I was going to ask. Can you define functional movement? Is a functional movement the same as doing a bicep curl, or can you get some clarity on that?
Yeah, so what I think of as functional movement and what we think of at the Functional Aging Institute is really something that moves the whole body in all 3 dimensions. And so is a bicep curl functional? Well, to some degree, sure. I mean, we have to be able to bend at the elbow, but it's not. It's really not the best place to turn to when you want to get into decent shape and get back into shape. So we want to look at things that move multiple body parts. That's why I like things like squat jumps, push-ups, squats, lunges, so things that are moving multiple muscle groups. And as you begin to get comfortable with those movements, you can make them more complex. So now we can do lunges with an arm curl. We can do lunges with an overhead press. We can do squats with an arm curl, squats with an overhead press. So we're working the entire body, and it doesn't take as long. And that's why I say for first step, it really should be to carve out 20 minutes 3 times a week. And you want to eventually get those 20 minutes packed with lots of full body movements to get the most bang for your buck.
Okay. Seems easy enough, but as with most things, I think the solution is easy. It's really simple, but it's the action that is the difficult part. Getting up and actually doing what you know you're supposed to do. What do you think? It's always simple the answer is simple, but the action is difficult. So next question, next up. Okay, 53-year-old.
I'm laughing because I see Dawn respond that she would be scared to do a burpee with her eyes closed. Well, just try it. Just try it sometime, Dawn. It's not as scary as you think, but it will force you to slow the movement down and control it a little bit, because now you have to think a little bit more about what your body's doing, since you can't visually see. But it will show you how vision dependent we are, those of us that are sighted. So that's funny. I got a chuckle out of that. All right, next one. We got a 53-year-old female here.
Yeah, 53-year-old female. My doc recently told me I needed to lose about 10 pounds to try and lower my blood pressure. You gave ideas about diet and exercise, but I'd like your advice. That's a big, broad question right there.
Yeah, that's pretty common. We see that a lot here at our facility, actually. It's usually around the 50 mark where a lot of men and women, their weight has started to creep up a little bit, their blood pressure started to creep up a little bit, the doctor starts talking about blood pressure meds. And so I say the best physicians are the ones that say, hey, you really need to get some diet and exercise, get this thing under control, drop a few pounds and get your blood pressure back where it should be, as opposed to the other docs who are just like, or I could give you a pill and you don't have to do any of that diet and exercise stuff. If that's your physician right now, I would say go find a new physician. So simple things on diet and exercise. The big impact on blood pressure is dropping a few pounds. If we drop 10 pounds, our blood pressure tends to drop 5 to 10 points. And so 10 pounds for people that have some weight to lose is not a gigantic goal. So my advice is try to lose a pound a week over the next 10 weeks. And the simple way to do that is to start exercising a little bit more. If you're not exercising at all, then just start exercising. If you are exercising, then not necessarily more, but more intensity. So just crank it up a little bit more, add a little bit more intensity to your exercise. And then in terms of diet, the simple tips for losing weight and even impacting blood pressure are going to be to cut out the trans fats. People are not paying enough attention to the trans fatty acids in their diet. So you really got to watch a lot of your processed foods, a lot of your margarine type products, shortening type products, vegetable oils, a lot of the different oils, and not butter per se, but all your fake butters, your margarines, and your I can't believe it's not butter and everything, pseudo butter, and anything else that has trans fats in it. A lot of processed foods can be culprits. Remove that stuff from your diet. And then lastly on the diet, the other thing that I would advise is watching your sugar intake, especially the amount of sugar and calories in the foods you're drinking. A lot of times people, they think when they see diet and they think blood pressure, they think high calorie foods, and they really should be thinking about the quantity of calories they're drinking. And so those are the simple tips on diet, and then on exercise, it's really the same tips I gave the 47-year-old guy looking to get back in shape. Just 20 minutes, 3 times a week, start cranking up the intensity, working towards a pound a week over the next 10 weeks, and that will make a big difference. And if you can get your blood pressure under control naturally, then you never have to go on these meds that have a lot of other long-term complications.
Okay, great. I know it can, here at 45, I've just recently started to experience what a lot of the older people that I talk to have told me for years, is that once you eclipse that 40-year-old mark and a little bit beyond there, it can get more difficult to lose weight, and I've experienced that. I didn't believe it for a while. I thought that was just an excuse that people were using, but I know now that I do have to keep the intensity in my workouts up, and I do have to watch what I eat a little bit more carefully in order to keep my pounds off. So that's definitely something that you need to consider. Okay. Next, let's see, what have we got here? Let me move this screen out of the way. And it goes a little bit into this next question right here. Okay, 74-year-old female wants to know, what is wrong with walking as a weight loss and exercise method? The rest of the question, it's a little bit longer, but
Sure.
she says she's got friends that walk a lot and they've lost some weight with it, but so many people are saying high intensity exercise and the treadmill is a waste of time. So what say you?
This is a loaded question here, but I'm happy to answer it because it's a really good question. It's complex. So 74-year-old females should absolutely be walking. The reality is you want to be able to continue to walk and walk well into your 80s and 90s, and so you should be walking. However, it's not the greatest exercise method for weight loss. It simply doesn't, it's not high enough intensity, it doesn't burn enough calories, and it doesn't stimulate much muscle growth and muscle activity, but it's still a great exercise method. So I get discouraged when I see people say, get off the treadmill, stop walking, walking's not good exercise. That's not true. What they mean is walking is not the best exercise method for losing weight. However, a lot of 74-year-old females don't have big weight loss goals if you actually ask them honestly. So they're walking for social enjoyment, they're walking for physical activity, they're walking for the fun of it, they're walking for the joy of it, all of which they should continue to do. The other thing that's wrong with walking, which the question does not specifically address, is that walking is not sufficient for maintaining muscle mass. And so if walking is the only exercise method a 74-year-old female is engaging in, she's going to continue to get weaker. She's going to lose functional strength. She's going to lose muscle mass. And that's going to impact her quality of life and the things she can do. And so walking alone is not sufficient as an exercise method because it's not going to maintain strength. Are you still there, Brian?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was looking at the questions and stuff. So just trying to see what's coming in next in line here. Okay.
This has been great. We've been going at it here for 45 minutes. So
yeah. So you want to take this one more and wrap it up? Let me see what my screen. Okay. So all right. So next question and last question for the day. Okay. Comes from Jess. And it's an interesting one. I'm glad you're here to ask it, and I may need to get some clarity if you don't know. Jess says, what diet, etc., do you recommend for someone with methane SIBO? Do you know what that is, Dan? Methane SIBO?
SIBO. I think.
Yes.
I think we're going to have to ask her to spell out that acronym for us.
Okay. She also says she's been treated for it, but haven't seen any recovery. I also have an immune condition impacting my nervous system. Wow. Okay, Jess.
Yeah. If Jess could, I guess we don't know if Jess is a male or female. If Jess could tell us what SIBO stands for. Just offhand, since I don't know the acronym, it doesn't look like a condition that I'm real familiar with, but if Jess could give us a little bit more information.
All right, and while we're waiting, Dan, I really appreciate you coming in here. I've learned a lot. You have definitely shown quite a broad range of expertise in what you've got here. So, guys, all of you that are in attendance, I hope that you can hand out the good doctor here a big round of virtual applause, letting him know that you appreciated what he's got going on here. And like I said, we are recording it, so it'll come back out you'll see it in your email, the recording, and when you can view it afterwards and stuff. And it looks like Jess is not. Maybe Jess isn't still in attendance. I don't know. He or she is not.
Did she already drop out?
No, it looks like she's still here, but
okay. Well,
not getting anything.
I'm guessing she's talking about some small intestinal bowel bacterial overgrowth, and I'm not used to seeing these two combined, the methane and the. So if we could get a little more.
Okay, there we go.
Clarity, but did she write it?
Yeah, Jess. What Dr. Dan is asking is, can you explain what SIBO is? Can you let him know what that is, what that stands for?
Yeah, my recollection on that is she's talking about small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So she's got a bacterial.
Yes, exactly.
Bacterial issue in her small bowel, and that could certainly be related to the autoimmune issue. She says she has an immune condition impacting her nervous system, which could impact her bowel, her intestinal health as well. If our immune system gets out of whack, then our intestinal health can definitely get out of whack. So, I mean, that's really definitely something that's getting out of my strength. When we start getting into gastrointestinal health, I tend to refer people to people that are specialists on intestinal health and gut health, and certainly would refer them to a physician that can, or a functional medicine person that can make good recommendations in terms of probiotics and things that they can do. You might want to see someone that's a irritable bowel specialist, because they're going to be dealing with people with a lot of bowel issues, and it's probably something that I'm not going to be able to give a great answer to. My first thought would be, have you looked at supplementations in terms of probiotics and different biological organisms you can get into your bowel to help get the bacteria more in balance. But that's probably something you should be talking to an irritable bowel specialist, an intestinal gut health specialist, and not something that's in my strength. So sorry about that.
Yeah, well, you can't have all the answers to everything.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely
but
not.
you certainly do have some good answers for fitness and health and the aging group. So everyone, again, please throw into the comments your appreciation for Dr. Dan, and we'll be signing off. And I know that you already know where to find him, because otherwise you wouldn't be on this webinar. So you're in touch with him on Facebook and through his website and stuff like that. So again, we appreciate every one of you for coming today, spending your time with us, asking the questions, and I hope and feel confident that you come away with some extra knowledge and some appreciation. So, all right. Well, Doc, do you have any last words? You got anything before we close up?
I don't. This has been fun. We'll have to do this again soon. Obviously, there's plenty of questions out there, so this has been a good afternoon. I hope people felt like they got some good content out of it, some good tips, and maybe we'll have to see if we can't turn this into a blog post to kind of post some of these hot topic questions and answers for people.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, everybody, take care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be hearing from you, and I can't say we'll be seeing you soon, but take care. Till next time.